Committee Vice Chair Betts, City of Desert Hot Springs.
Present.
Committee Member Miller, City of Indio.
Present.
Committee Member Townsend, City of Rancho Mirage. Thank you, everyone. A quorum of the committee is present.
Thank you. Item number 4 is presentations. Apparently, we have no presentations apart from the agendized items. And number 5 is the finalization of the agenda, and apparently there are no changes to the agenda. We now go to item 6, public comment. Mr. Vail, do you have something to say?
Clerk, are there any public comments on the items not on the agenda?
Mr. Vail, we received no requests via email in advance for public comment. However, I do see that there is someone on the attendee side that would like to provide public comment. If there's anyone else listening that would like to provide public comment, please press *9 or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and I can add you to the queue. I will pause momentarily.
While you're pausing, I'll remind any public speakers that they do have 3 minutes per topic. It needs to be relative to each of the individual topics on the agenda.
Okay. And Mr. Garcia, I will now change Zoom controls.
Okay, can I just confirm, is this is public comments on non-agenda items? Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And we have no one to speak.
Well, I see a hand raised. Mr. Garcia's hand is raised.
Mr. Garcia, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, you're recognized for 3 minutes on non-agenda items, Mr. Garcia.
On non-agenda, I want to speak on agenda items.
Okay, thank you. We will call, that's coming up very quickly. Thank you for your candor. We'll move on and we will make sure that you are alerted when we get to the agenda items that are open for public comment. So apparently there are no public comments on non-agenda items. If that's correct, we'll move on to number 7, committee members' comments. Desert Hot Springs?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Indian Wells has no comments. Indio?
No comments, Chair.
Very good. Okay, now we are in item 8, which is revisions to check policy number B030403. We will have a staff report, then we will open it to public comment, then we will close public comment and deliberate among ourselves. Mr. Garcia, your staff report, please, on item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, member of the committee. My name is Luis Garcia, Controller Assistant CFO. The board originally adopted a check policy in 2006, which contains controls such as check stock requirements and roles and responsibilities for different functions surrounding checks. Among the requirements in a check policy is the need for 2 wet signatures on all checks. We are proposing adding 2 executive positions and removing 1 from the current list. That would be a net increase of 1 position for check signers. This will assist in coordinating signatures through vacancies and different work schedules. There's no financial impact to this decision. Therefore, we are recommending that the Board of Directors approve the revisions to check policy number B030403. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on this item? Well, I guess I should turn that over to Mr. Vail, right? Or do I?
No, that's fine, Chair. Okay. Each one of these you can just ask.
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this item?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any hand raised on the attendee side. However, if there is anyone on the attendee side that would like to provide public comment, please press *9 or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Again, please press *9 or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen so I can add you to the queue. Mr. Chair, I do not see any hand raised. Mr. Anthony Garcia, if you would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand so that I may change your Zoom controls. Okay, and Mr. Garcia, I now change your Zoom controls. Please unmute yourself.
Mr. Garcia, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I know, 3 minutes. Good morning, board and chair. Credit card statements. I can see by the statements that Lawrence Skyver is still spending taxpayers' money. According to FY14 and FY15 budget. Lauren must have board approval to travel. So you're approving all this reckless spending. Her 2.3 million budget. She is spending over 400,000 in budget in legal services that show you that there's a problem, black and white. $91,000 for subscriptions. She is sucking the Sunline dry. Money for
Sorry, Mr. Garcia,
money for
this has to do with the check policy. Do you have any comments specific to the check policy?
The check policy, I do have a comment for the check policy. Check policy is adding more positions to the signers that already exist to be able to spend more at a higher rate of more than 100,000. That's all. I'll provide my comment at the next one.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any further public comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I do not see anyone else on the attendee side that would like to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. We will then take it to the board. Does any board member or committee member have a question or comment? I guess I do. So many companies and governmental entities are going into minimal check writing mode where whenever possible, the check is eliminated altogether. I cite, for an example, RCTC, where I believe the number of checks that they write are very, very, very small. Have we given consideration to doing something similar?
Yes, we have, Mr. Chair, and it's something that we've discussed with Lori Salazar, which is a financial consultant. So we are exploring different options on how we can make our financial processes more efficient. So that is something we have been discussing, Mr. Chair.
Could you kind of give us a ballpark as to when you might come back with a recommendation? 6 months, 3 months?
I would say, go ahead, Lauren.
I mean, we are reviewing the check policy now. So I think that we would be able to bring something back to board operations as a discussion item in December, and then a decision potentially in January.
Well, given that, do you still want us then to revise the check policy at this time?
I do believe this would help us ensuring that we move payments along quickly. We have to make sure we have 2 wet signatures at the present time. And so we are removing one position and adding 2 more check signers. That's just to make sure that we pay our bills on time to all of our vendors.
Okay, so your request is that we approve this now, but you are working towards reducing the number of checks that have to be written and processed, and you're going to report back to us sometime early next year, probably.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chair, if I might, motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Russell. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't up. I'm using my phone right now, so I'm challenged on the meeting here. But I was going to make a motion, Mr. Chair, to accept the staff recommendation with a provision that the policy be reviewed and the report made to the committee in January.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Vail, do we need a roll call vote or can we do a voice vote?
We don't, Mr. Chair, we do not need a roll call vote.
I'm sorry?
No roll call vote is needed.
No vote? Okay, fine. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we go to item number 9, which is revisions to the procurement policy. Again, for staff report, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And my name is Luis Garcia, Controller Assistant CFO. And I, myself, along with Lori Salazar, our financial consultant, will be going over this presentation, which you see on your screen now. We are bringing forward a proposed revision to the procurement policy as a follow-up to the discussion item that was presented to the Board Operations Committee and Finance and Audit Committee in July. Next slide, please. The board item and red line policy attachments included in the board packet have all of the details on the proposed changes. In this presentation, we'll be highlighting the main points and benefits of the proposed changes. The action item today would be to modify the CEO's authority in Chapter 2 of the procurement policy, which would change the limits and update them to align with FTA thresholds, which is the Federal Transit Administration. as well as similar other transit properties. The contract authority for the agency staff is completely within the power of the board for approval. Next slide, please. The maximum proposed limit of $250,000 in this proposed revision aligns with the FTA's definition of a small purchase. The small purchase threshold from the FTA was increased from $100,000 to $250,000 in 2018. As you can see, the current limit of $100,000 for the agency in our procurement policy aligns with the old FTA threshold. Given this fact, plus the increase of costs and services and goods, and the sheer number of large capital projects that the agency undertakes, we can see that this revision is overdue. Again, this proposed revision was presented to the two committees in July, and we received no concerns. There have been no changes to the proposal that was presented in July. Next slide, please. One of the questions that was proposed by a committee member in July was how this was in comparison to other transit properties. As you can see, we reviewed other progressive transit properties and have summarized a few for you on this slide. Given the fact that these limits are established by each of the agency's governing bodies, we found that there were no two identical properties, but heard and spoke to a lot of properties that had recently increased their limits or were planning on bringing forward increases to their limits in the near future. I would like now to hand it off to Gloria, who's going to finalize the presentation. Next slide, please.
Thank you again as we introduce a change in our policy that recognizes inflation and supports the federal government's goal of simplifying acquisition regulations and procedures. The board at the last meeting in July directed staff to consult with our auditors, and here is the response from our managing partner of Vasquez and Company. Verbatim, the above authorizations are appropriate as long as there is a basis based on the authority's procurement activity, there are monitoring controls, and the board approves the policy. The basis, again, is FTA's federal threshold changes. The policy is before you for approval, and there will be no changes to the existing monitoring internal controls to provide checks and balances. Just to assure the board, the Sunline is in good shape in demonstrating its fiscal responsibility. Sunline's internal control procedures have been validated by external auditors, as well as state and federal reviewers through their annual and special audits and reviews. Another validation of our performance is Sunline's continuing success in being awarded competitive grants, most recently over 15 million, which is why we need to continue to find ways to streamline our operation so that we can deliver projects and services. And this action item will help a great deal. Thank you.
Is there anything further from staff?
No, Mr. Chair, that concludes our report on this presentation.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment requests?
And Mr. Chair, we do have someone on the attendee side that wishes to provide public comment. And before changing Zoom controls for Mr. Garcia, is there anyone else on the attendee side that would like to provide comment? Please press *9. Use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. I'll pause momentarily to see if there's anyone else. And Mr. Chair, the only person providing public comment at this time will be Mr. Anthony Garcia. I will now change Zoom controls.
Mr. Garcia, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Okay, giving her more power. Reckless spending, her 2.3 million budget. She is spending over 400,000 budget on legal services. You know there's a problem, black and white. 91,000 for subscription. She's sucking the company dry. Money for operators, and in good bargaining faith, as a reference to June 27, 2012, Chairman of the Board, Eduardo Garcia, sent to the Board of Directors resolution number 2012-21 to bargain in good faith. You're giving her more power to spend more money. I was reading the CVAG report, and it trying to save money at $2 million, because of the reckless spending. That's all.
Thank you very much. Is there any further comments, Madam Clerk?
And there is no one else on the attendee side that would like to provide public comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We will take it back to the committee now. Does any committee member have a question or comment?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Please.
First off, speaking of the public comment, we have a finance and audit committee that reviews all spending proposals. And we also have a full board that goes over those times they're necessary. I don't think there's any reckless spending per period. And there certainly isn't any that's been approved by the board. We still maintain that authorization. I have very high confidence in our general manager and CEO to be a good steward of the finances. And so I don't have a problem with this agenda item in terms of control of spending. Now, I know that said, there is inflation going on, but I'm not comfortable with a 250,000 limit. I need to see how that works. I need a little bit more detail on. Give me an example of a contract that's going to go forward at 250,000 versus 100,000 that's going to be held up by having to go and get authorization. So what's going to be delayed? Has the world got that much more expensive? So if I could get that response, that would be wonderful.
So one of the items that would be alleviated with this process would be for items that are already approved and itemized in the budget. So the $250,000 limit would only be allowed under something that the board has already approved under an approved plan, either in our budget or our short-range transit plan. So this does not preclude that limit, that requirement from going forward. The limit for items not approved by the board or in an individual plan would be $100,000. So we still have that limitation on all of our items. And this would involve some of our regular processes, such as our regular procurements for our software programs. That'd be one example. We have large expenses for our software that we use at the agency, such as Avail or Trapeze.
Yep, that was an excellent explanation. It clears it up a lot for me, and I appreciate that. And my reservations about voting yes on this one are gone. Thank you for that.
You want to make a motion then, Russell?
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. It passes 3-0. Thank you. The next item is item 10, approval of revolving fund and state of good repair policy. Again, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gloria and myself will be taking care of this presentation together as well. We're bringing forward a proposed new policy for approval as a follow-up again to another item that we brought forward to the two committees for discussion and presentation in July. Next slide, please. The new policy will establish two funds. One would be referred to as the revolving fund, which would be for cash flow purposes, since Sunline operates on a primarily reimbursement-driven model. The second would be for a state of good repair fund, which would be for capital and operating needs to assist in the replacement, as an example, and repair of vital equipment needed to keep the agency operating. The agency has had a lot of grant success, and we need to prepare for unforeseen costs and replacement of planning for large capital projects. Funding of the two state of good repair and revolving funds will come by way of unrestricted revenues that are generated by Sunline, that are not covered by state, federal, local regulations, and are within the board's purview to take advantage of all the innovative revenue streams that the agency generates. Next slide, please. As a reminder, an ad hoc committee of this board of directors was established to, among other things, discuss options to increase the agency's financial independence and stability. This policy accomplishes those goals of that committee. Again, this policy was previously brought forward for discussion of the two committees in July and has been reviewed for concurrence by Sunline's general counsel. There were no questions or concerns that were received in July, and there have been no changes to the policy. And I'd be happy to hand it off to Gloria, who's going to finalize the presentation. Next slide, please.
Thank you. It's good to be back with this action item that will really be a game changer for Sunline. I say this because this action provides a financial strategy that will support your initiatives as a board. While we have presented to you the relevant business reasons for this policy, I would like to emphasize the last 2 bullet points in this PowerPoint presentation. First, to assure you that this policy maintains compliance with our funding and business rules. The policy is also written where it clearly defines and restricts use of both funds under your oversight. Along the way, Sunline will maintain its internal control procedures and business processes that consistently demonstrate its technical capacity and ability to deliver projects while complying with the rules. And lastly, as I mentioned before, this is that missing piece of the puzzle in reinforcing Sunline's culture of operating like a business, adding to your existing participative budget process, performance measurement and management, performance-based decision-making as we adhere to your mission and vision. We're excited about the benefits and opportunities that this policy will allow. Thank you.
Anything further from staff? Apparently not.
No, Mr. Chair.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
And Mr. Chair, yes, we do have someone on the attendee side that would like to provide public comment. Before switching Zoom controls for Mr. Anthony Garcia, is there anyone else on the attendee side that would like to provide comment? Please press *9. Use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. I will pause momentarily. And Mr. Chair, we only have one person indicating that they wish to speak. Mr. Garcia, I now change your Zoom controls.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, I might not need all 3 minutes. Okay, good afternoon, board and chair. I just want to ask, where is the Title VI that was due in 2022 and public comments and reaching out to the public of what they want, what it best suits their needs and their transportation needs in the valley. I haven't been able to find the 2022 Title VI report, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, are there no further public comments? Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll take it back to the committee. Does any committee, either committee members have questions or comments?
I got a quick comment, Chair. I think it's a long time coming. I think it's a great opportunity for us to put some money aside so that when we do have some operations or some needs, we can utilize that funding instead of either having to go back to RCTC or look into our general fund. Just a smart move, especially when it's not money coming from outside. It's our general budget that's just being set aside. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of this, and I'd like to make a motion to take staff's recommendation. I'll wait for Russell.
I was just going to say I'd like to second that, but I want to echo your comments. I remember this being discussed, I don't know how many years ago, and really glad to see this coming about. So yes, I support it wholeheartedly.
Good. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes 3-0. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. That's 3-0. Next item is item 11, Public Conduct Ordinance. Mr. Vail.
Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me, let me break in. This is an information item only. There will be no vote taken. It is an information item only. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We just want to put this issue out for the committee to consider. We'll come back to you at your next meeting for actual discussion, so you have some time to think about it, maybe talk with your own city staff if you find the need to do so. This has to do with what appears to be a growing problem that Sunline and its riders are facing at its bus shelters throughout the valley. We've had a number of complaints with regard to various types of conduct by not just the unhoused population, but the larger transient population, which would include people who have homes but make their living by soliciting or other actions out in city and in public facilities. Vanessa Mora is going to go through those instances of conduct that we're seeing that are interfering with bus operations and ridership. Then it's going to come back to me, and I'll walk through some of the practical and legal hurdles that we have to to deal with, and then present some recommendations for your consideration on how we might start discussing this issue. And so with that introduction, I'll tip it to Vanessa, and she can go through the conduct that we're experiencing at our shelters.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vale, and good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Vanessa Mora, Chief Safety Officer for Sunline. The increased loitering by the unhoused and the transient population within our service has created a rise in unsanitary conditions and a potential of safety concerns at our bus stops and our shelters.
Could you slow down a little bit, please? You're reading and it's going way too fast.
No, not a problem. Our bus shelters are becoming filthy by individuals setting up camp and living at our shelters, as well as utilizing the area as their personal bathroom. The loitering is causing riders to feel unsafe at the bus stops and shelters while they are waiting to utilize our service, as there have been reports of drug use and riders are not willing to wait at the stop. This also causes the riders to seek alternative transportation as they do not feel safe to wait there. We have experienced some ADA access issues. These are being created by some of the loiterers stationing themselves at the shelters with an excessive amounts of their personal belongings. This situation has also caused a higher percentage of pass-bys, as riders have complained that the bus stops and shelters are being taken over, which the rider will wait in an area that sometimes causes them to miss the bus or be passed by. On-time performance issues can be created as this situation causes unnecessary stops for operators, as they are to service every stop a rider is visible at. Sunline is seeing an increase in violations to our customer code of conduct in our shelters and our buses. This may also create a higher percentage in possible assaults and other crimes against actual riders and our employees who service our stops, as well as our bus operators. Thank you. I will now pass it back to Mr. Vale.
Thank you, Vanessa. So when we break this down, we have probably 4 basic conduct issues that interrelate to some legal and practical issues that we've had. So we have sanitation and health at our stops. We have personal safety concerns. We have physical access to the facility and to transit, and we have disruption of service. The idea that we're going to just pass an ordinance and that conduct will go away isn't accurate for a number of reasons. One, Sunline doesn't have an enforcement ability. It doesn't have personnel. It doesn't have its own police department. Second, it largely does not own the property upon which the bus shelters exist. Those are, for the most part, in the member agency's jurisdictions. Sunline does typically have easements or right-of-way that allow that shelter to be there. And then there's some legal limitations. We don't, at this point, have enforceable ordinances or the mechanism to cite people, although our member jurisdictions likely do have within their public nuisance code provisions that could be applied. And then finally, there's the issue about the unhoused and the problems that arise from the Martin versus Boise court case of several years ago that limits the ability of local code and police officers from moving unhoused populations out of the city or away from public facilities. We think there's a distinction because our bus shelters aren't like a public park. They're more like a driveway or an entryway to a public facility where people go gather temporarily and then enter onto that. In order to really fix the problem, my office has looked at this and determined that what we probably need to do is meet with each of the member jurisdictions, to see what they have in place, what their resources are, and how some joint approach might work. And that might mean that Sunline needs to enact an ordinance that allows member jurisdictions to enforce it, or maybe we need to suggest modifications to their code. The other options are that we just adopt a model ordinance, or we adopt amendments to recommend to each separate member agency, but that seems to really put the cart before the horse before we know what member agencies are doing and what their limitations are. I noted that in the recommendation, it was the general counsel's office could meet with the city attorney. That doesn't necessarily have to be the initial point of conduct. Lauren has very capable members of her staff who could go and meet with city staff members so that legal fees aren't absorbed right at the very beginning. That summarizes, I think, our presentation. I don't know, Lauren, if you have any closing comments that you'd like to make, but we wanted to just let the board members start to chew on this issue a little bit. Maybe we could have a dialogue at our next meeting. Thank you.
That's exactly it. I think just thinking about this and what you all think should be included in the pathway forward is all we're seeking today. And we are still working through this and researching opportunities and approaches. As Eric said, I think that I have a relationship with all your city managers. And so we as staff can talk a little bit about this with them and get their feedback. So when we bring it back to you as a discussion item next month, we have a little more meat around what each city interprets this to be as a lift for them. So I think that at this point, we don't need any decisions made, and we appreciate your time in the matter.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone on the attendee side that wishes to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. Any comments from either of the commissioners? Realizing that it is coming back, but if you'd like to give direction to staff or let them know what you're thinking, this would be a good time.
Well, I'd certainly have some comments on this one. Our city very recently has noticed the bus shelters being taken over, turned into housing for the homeless. And it's certainly impeding ridership. I think staff's given an excellent presentation on this. My suggestion would be to send a letter to the city manager and copy to all council members individually that basically lays out exactly what you did in this presentation in a succinct manner to raise the salience of the issue as it relates to Sunline's concerns. And I think ultimately this is on the cities to take care of. I don't think a communication just between CEO of Sunline and the city managers will always be enough to get the momentum going that we're looking for. As much as I love city managers, they're very busy. Sometimes it takes us electeds to apply a little additional pressure. So that would be my suggestion, that you just open it up for dialogue. Hi, we're making you aware of this problem. Here's what the issues are, and pointing out the points that you did. And then I won't belabor it anymore, but I would really like to see that letter.
Okay. Any comments, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I concur. I think Russell kind of hit it on the nail on the head. I think really staff needs to go and talk to each individual cities, because I don't think our jurisdictions, one, they have different public safety. Some, like you, have sheriffs. Some of us have our own public police department. But there's got to be some examples out there that people are working. I know that the city of Indio has tried to help move people along, not because of any other issue, but to open up the right of ways and the stuff that they do when the homeless get involved or some of the unhoused get involved. They bring all their stuff with them, and it clutters up and it blocks off the sidewalk where it becomes unsafe. So I think there's probably some actions out there, and I think it should be the elected officials and city management and our public safety personnel coming up with a policy in place, because it's got to be universal. Because if Sunline is having an issue, and let's say it's in Palm Springs and it's not working right, or in Indio, let's go to Indio, then that falls kind of on the city to either come up with a policy in place or figure out what they're doing, because I don't want it to be in one section and not with the other. So I think we need to get some buy-in from the different agencies. And there might be a couple appetites from a couple of cities that don't want to address that issue.
Right. Okay. Thank you. First of all, Russell, I think your idea of informing all the council members is a good one. I'm not sure I like the idea of our executive director communicating directly with elected officials. Perhaps the letter could be signed by the executive director and the chair of Sunline, so that it would be staff to staff and elected to elected. Just a little protocol of if I get that's just a thought.
That's a great thought.
I think we need to protect Lauren from the concerns that she's going over people's head and going directly to council members. But we can resolve that if the Sunline chair would co-sign the letter. Okay, well, anything further before we adjourn? Any good things to talk about other than we've got a few minutes before the next meeting?
The only thing I'd like to ask Lauren is where she feels that she's going to go with this from now, considering it's going to come back next month. What's the plan? And then did she get enough information for us to make it move forward where she feels comfortable?
Definitely got enough direction, but we'll want you to know that you have more time for discussion next month and the board as well. But we're in fine shape to move forward.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
got one more comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Glenn, that is one heck of a great background you've got there. That's really looks great.
Well, Eric's isn't half bad either. I mean, that looks pretty ideal. I wish my office had a view like that. I only have Mount Eisenhower behind me, so and it's behind me. So, all right, everybody, we'll see you at noon. We are adjourned. Did you want to say something?
Nope, I'm good.
We are adjourned. We'll see you at noon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.